I've lived 1,000 lives. I've piloted 1,000 souls. I've killed and fought and died just for another role.
This is the Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, a roundtable discussion that's a mix of friendship, humor, unbridled enthusiasm, and tabletop RPG topics sent in from around the world.
Just for another role.
Hello, and welcome to the Happy Jacks RPG Podcast, Season 30, Episode 13. My name is Kimmy.
I'm Nick.
I'm Stork.
And on today's episode, Leatherneck from Michigan asks about making a location the star of a campaign instead of characters. Mike F. from New York shares a horror story, how not to run a convention horror game. And Sean from Washington, D.C. asks why releasing old editions of D&D products would be a good marketing strategy. If you'd like to contribute a topic to our show, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That is happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. All right. And upcoming events and stuff for Happy Jacks. Hexbreakers, our Kids on Broom actual play, started this last Wednesday night. We did our Session 0 character creation session. It will take place every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and it will be playing in person for the most part. Sadly, Adam got COVID, so we had to do it remote. So, but yeah, moving forward, health issues aside, we will be mostly in person, hopefully.
And he seems to be doing okay, right?
Oh yeah, he's doing great. He was able to participate and like had the energy, but we were just like, no, thank you.
Just want to put that out there for anyone who's going like, oh crap.
Yeah. I think that's just going to be the new normal for gamers these days. Everybody's very good now at doing stuff remotely, and if somebody gets COVID, we're like, let's all just stay home and do it remotely tonight. So
exactly.
Let's all just know that that's going to be what happens from now on.
Yeah, and we're going to do that with Happy Jack. So every once in a while, if you see us popping into remote for a session or two, then it's probably because someone was either exposed or might be positive, and just to try and keep everybody safe, which is obviously our number one priority. Also, we have an unnamed quest RPG, which will get a name very soon. And
we're working on it.
Yeah, we're working on it. There's so many like ship puns, and it's an ocean faring adventure.
Right. We want it to be real ship shape.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many good puns. Anyway, so we're working on a title.
That, right? I'm the master of this, by the way.
You know, I've been missing you, Stork.
Oh no.
I don't know.
Oh,
I'm
no.
blushing and looking rudder. Getting rudder and rudder as we go.
Yeah. This whole conversation has gone adrift. Anyway, Oh. All right. That will be starting on July 23rd. That will be running on Saturday nights. It was originally going to start tomorrow, but that didn't work out with scheduling. There was a upheaval and things. And that way we've got, a little bit of time between two campaigns starting anyway. So personally, I prefer that. And Nick will be in that game. Yay.
I wonder if we can have a downheaval.
I'm sure you can.
You can have a downheaval.
Why not?
Like, I realized the other day, or heard the other day, that you can actually be whelmed.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know about whelmed. I knew about gruntled.
Gruntled?
Yeah, you can be gruntled instead of disgruntled.
So naming my next Kender Gruntled.
Gruntled.
You disgruntled or degruntled?
Degruntled.
I'm sorry, you were in the middle of you were trying to be
it's not
responsible host and emailed it.
Call to action.
Carrie.
Yes, our call to action is going to be oops. All right. Jackercon. Yeah, sorry. July 22nd through the 24th is going to be Jackercon, which is our free online convention. You can find all the information in the link to the Discord at happyjacks.org/JC. Currently, we have 16 games on the schedule for that weekend,
Wow.
which is a lot.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, and like about half of them are full. And the great thing about it is a lot of them are less traditional games. So we've got a bunch of different PBTAs, some of which are still in beta, like the one I'm going to be running. We also have like For the Queen. We've also got, gosh, I should have written a list out. There's a mage game. There's a Vampire the Masquerade game. Tokyo something. I don't know. There's a bunch of really cool and different
Knights,
systems. Maybe.
Tokyo.
I think something.
I remember seeing it, but now
Overdrift
I'm
or Underdrift
Tokyo
or
Drift?
something. I don't know.
Isn't Tokyo Drift like the car game?
yeah.
Yeah. But if you check out happyjacks.org/JC, there's a list of all the games, a Google Calendar, so you can see what time they're at. And it's really easy to go sign up if you go to the Discord. Just go and you click the little check mark emoji. It's like, I want to be in that game.
Also, it's entirely fan run and fan created, so it's a great way to meet and talk to other people who are fans of something you're already a fan of.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, or if you are being forced to listen to us by your captor, I apologize, but you might decide that you actually kind of like this too, so check it out.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think that's all the news. First email.
You want to read it? Go for it.
Sure.
I'll read the long one.
Oh, I figure we'd probably switch off on that because it's a chunky.
It's a long.
We know about Luke Skywalker's hero's journey, but what do we know about the hero's journey for the Millennium Falcon? Can an RPG be run where the hero's journey isn't the players, but an object or place? I'm planning to do this in a sci-fi horror setting. The setting and rules expect there to be a PC death and PC replacement. To do that and keep things consistent, I decided to have a single base of operation, a small moon base that was once mined by a mysterious and disappeared ancient race. The base will start out as a den of, quote, scum and villainy. The base's hero's journey would occur through the player's actions, eventually becoming humanity's savior from the horror. Capital The Horror. Before I get too far into this dark hole, I thought I would ask Happy Jackers for some input. So, do you have any input? Thank you. Leatherneck from West Michigan.
Very brief email and right to the point.
I'm not sure what he's asking here. Are you asking for ideas, or
I think so.
or just like can a thing be part of the hero's journey? Which is an interesting thought.
I think that what he wants to do is spend more focus on the journey of this base rather than on any individual character.
Mm-hmm.
And so sort of tell the story of this moon base as it goes from being a real shithole to being a really great place that in fact saves everyone from the horror. So probably some like Last Shining City or something like that.
There's a lot of different systems that focus on this and do this. Were you going to say that?
No,
Sorry. Okay.
Go ahead.
So there's now it may not be perfect for exactly what you want to do, but it can maybe like incite some cool thoughts about it. The Quiet Year is a really great card-based one where you basically build a town for 1 year. It's like 1 year of prosperity before destruction. So you come up with like the story of this 1 year based on the seasons. There's also Companion's Tale, which kind of combines creating a character and then building a location as well and the lore around that location. Both of those games were big inspirations for Decima, and it's like have a map component and things like that as well. And for PBTA, Stone Top does that, which it's like a Iron Age, Bronze Age type fantasy. I don't know if it's fantasy actually, like story. I haven't played it. We had a AP of it that Emily ran, but it is very much focused on the actual city that not village. It's a village. It's not a city. You're building being a huge component and almost a character itself in the story. So there might be some mechanics that you can borrow / steal from that system that could work for what you want to do.
Go ahead.
The thing that popped into my head was I think it's for the Fate games, the Dresden Files games, for specifically, which has you spend pretty much session 0 building your city that you're going to go play around in, and that way it gives all the players ownership in this city, and it is a character in your game that you all have had input in. And I think that that's maybe the way to go, because everybody now already knows what the base looks like, so there's no explaining about what's going on. Everybody cares about it, so they're not going to just like, screw it, let's blast off and leave it. They're like, no, this is our base that we spent time building and we care about and we're upgrading. And yeah, that was the thing that's the only thing I could think of. But I'm not sure if that's the system you want to run it in. It's the only other thing.
The way I was interpreting this is that Leatherneck has a system that they want to run, but they want to make sure that the base itself also has its own sort of story arc. And to answer the first part of the question, I absolutely think that a location or a ship or something can have a story arc. Because if you look at things that, changing gears for 1 second, Joss Whedon is a piece of shit, but Firefly and Serenity was a character in the ship and developed kind of a personality, and you knew where you were, and it told parts of the story through the locations you were on the ship. And you can absolutely import that into parts of your game, in this case the base being Kimmy was great to remind me about Stonetop, which I actually played in that AP.
That's right.
And it was it does do a good job with sort of advancing what happens in that town. It might be worth picking up to take a look at to see how that works. What I would think, though, is that if you're planning on having the players be ephemeral, if there's going to be death and turnover, what you might want to do is every time someone dies, or at the end of a session after everyone dies, do a little update on what their actions have contributed to how the base has changed based on those actions, and then reset it to that level until another player dies. And so with each death, you can kind of see how it's evolving from this kind of hellhole into this really cool utopia, or this savior for everyone.
That's cool. I like the thought of progressing and having hopefully the players contribute every time their individual character dies. Or something like that.
Yeah, I would think it would totally have to be a group consensus, but maybe the person who dies gets special say because they're the one who advanced the clock.
Yeah.
That's cool, but it may not even be dies. It might be somebody you set up a mission, or you make let's say you want to buy a missile system from a nearby star system, and so you arrange to have the convoy and you go get it, and you escape the pirates, and your guy gets down there and he gets the missile system, and then time advances and they're the mayor or the captain of this base, and then time advances again and his family takes over. It doesn't have to be death at every turn, but it certainly, whatever the characters do need to affect the base. You also need to be careful that this doesn't turn into glorified shopping. You get enough points and you go buy a missile system. You get enough more points, and otherwise you're playing a video game where you're just building up your base and putting pictures on the wall. And as fun as that is, I don't know if that is sustainable as a game.
Maybe.
But
Depending
maybe.
on what your players are looking for.
That's true.
It might be neat where like they progress, and then like when a character dies, it jumps you forward in time a certain amount of time. Like there's like,
Oh, that'd be neat.
yeah, so it may not even be a huge amount of time. Maybe it's like when a character dies, it's like you jump 3 months or something like that, depending on exactly what your setting is. Vossen actually has a mechanic too for adding and building on the base of the players, and it is horror based, so that might be a great thing to check out too, because I know in our AP of it right now, every session they're supposed to do, like as they play, they find new rooms and resources and stuff in their house that they built, and that's a big part of that system. So maybe looking through that too. You'd have to switch up it's horror, so I know I keep thinking he says scum and villainy, so I keep jumping
Thinking
to
of the game
Star
Scum and
Wars.
Villainy. Yeah.
It's like no, not Star
Well,
Wars.
also the game Scum and Villainy.
Yeah, yeah, which is
That's what I
Star
kept
Wars
saying.
with the serial
Well,
numbers scratched off.
It's kind of every
Yes.
space with the numbers filed off.
Yeah, that's very true.
But like much more complicated than other all space games.
All right,
Plug.
plug. We can get through a show without plugging something I'm working on. I'm cool with it.
Well, let's schedule that, because we'll put one in that
One
does
in.
that.
You get one. Yeah, so I think it's really cool. I'd love for you to write back and let us know what you end up doing or what you may have done, since this was sent to us a little while ago. But I love that type of mechanic in a game, because it does add, like you were saying, Stork, add ownership. And it really, it creates an emotional reason for the players not to just be like, well, this sucks, I'm out of here. Like,
No, that's really key, because there's been
Right.
a couple of times when I've like, clearly we're supposed to save the city and I have no investment in it.
yeah.
And you really just want to leave.
Let it burn.
Yeah, I don't care about these people. They were mean to us and I don't really know anything about this city. So, yeah, you really kind of have to bake that in at the very beginning so that they actually care.
Team Banana 71 in the chat also suggests Bucket of Bolts, which is a solo journaling game, but it may have some cool mechanics you could steal for that. I actually bought that, but I haven't read through it yet. It's one of those games I was like, I will buy all the space games because I'm writing a space game, and I will read them all, and then I haven't read them.
You have to do your research.
Yeah.
I'd like to talk a little bit about like a place being a part of it, a character. And I know it's kind of an esoteric thought, but if you think about it, when you're back in the day when you made a dungeon, you mapped it all out and it was an important character.
Yeah.
You had to read each, and it was, and even in movies, haunted house is as important a character, maybe more so than the actual people that are in it. Than Nostromo.
Yeah.
There was tons of not dialogue. That's a thing. Follow me
Right.
on this.
Yeah.
Where people are running around, whatever, and you're just looking at and it was an important character in the mood of the piece. Right? Same with the thing. You are stuck in this one place. You, at the end of the movie, you're as familiar with the layout of that place as anybody else. In the movie, it's I totally understand how a place can become, or is a character, or at the very least an NPC.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that strange of a concept if you just sort of think about what it means to be a character or an NPC. It's more than just a character. It's more than just a person. It could be an animal. It could be a house. It could be a ship.
I know people who love Supernatural because they love the Apollo, which has sort of is a character in a way for the show.
If you were playing a Mad Max game, a Road Warrior game,
Oh, yeah.
your car would be
Absolutely.
absolutely.
I'm trying to remember. Also, Baby is the best character in Supernaturals. I love the Impala. Now I hate horror shows, movies. Like, I don't really watch them. But there was one that my Sam, my partner, showed me. It was a couple years ago now, and I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was so good because it was so character driven, but the house was always like this like presence, even when the characters left, because it started out, and I'm not going to do spoilers, can't even remember the name of it, I'm so bad with names, but like it was about a family who went and moved into a house for a time and just experienced scary stuff. They moved out, and it was about how their lives devolved.
Yeah, that's actually sort of based on a real story. It turned out the house was it's not a spoiler because it's in the I think it's the same one. The house was turned into a funeral parlor. Is that one?
No, I don't think so.
It's like the something horror, the something affair, the something, but it's not a series, right?
No, it was a TV series.
Oh, okay.
It was absolutely a TV series. Very high.
Hill House.
Yeah, it's something like that. I think something like that.
I don't watch horror, so I don't know.
Yeah,
but I
it was-
remember people talking.
Yeah.
The Haunting of Hill House was like one of the scariest movies I ever saw as a kid. The original,
Yeah.
terrifying.
I think that's what they made into the series.
Yeah.
Or loosely.
The
but
Ghost of Mr. Chicken scared the stuff out of me as a kid. No, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but the cool thing about this story, and the only reason I watched it, and literally Sam sat there and was like, okay, look away right now, don't look at it. And it's like hide under the blanket until it was, but it was so well done with the characters and the story with the characters, like apart from the horror, and like how like the family had moved away and the kids were all adults by now, and it was like how that experience had like fucked up their lives, and how some of them thought it was real, how some of them didn't, and how they all just kept getting sucked back to the house, and how it affected their lives. And even though a huge portion, many episodes take place way far away, like the other side of the country from the house, like the house is just this permanent fixture in their lives. So I don't know, that it was a really great, I don't know if it was The Haunting. It was fairly recent. It's a newer show. I'll come up with it.
But the house sort of loomed over their lives,
Even when
they
they were like in New York City, super far away, it was like always something that was there. So if I remember what the name of that series is, that might be a good thing to watch. But it
Was it
really is
Lovecraft
powerful.
Country?
No,
Because
it
it does
was
sound very Lovecrafty.
it was before. I think it was before Lovecraft Country, but not super long before. There, I'll look. I'll Google while we're talking about the next email, and I'll come up with it. But like,
Well, you'll have time.
right, but that's also a great example of how the house, even when they're not out the house, can be a huge character in the story, and working towards that with your campaign might be a really great thing. Like having the characters create a reason that the house is always on their mind or in the back of their mind, or they can't really, even if they're not there, they can't completely forget about it. So
Were you playing a Bill's Traveler game where he gave them a ship and the ship turned out to be haunted, and so Bill was playing these NPCs that were part of the ship? Were you in it?
No.
Okay. Anyway, it's one of the latest APs he had.
oh yeah. Oh yes, the Haunting of Hill House.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and it's a series of that.
Because the original movie terrified me.
Yes, it's not the movie. It's a really high quality, well produced series.
And there was a remake of it too, which wasn't nearly as scary as the original.
But it came out in 2018.
There you go.
Okay.
So, and then, oh yeah, they had a second season, but I haven't watched the second season, which has all the same actors playing all different roles completely. And that was The Haunting of Blythe Manor, I think, or something like that. They had 2 seasons. I didn't watch the second season, but it's really good. And then just get a friend or a partner who's already watched it if you don't like it, and then like hide. Because I loved watching it, but I just didn't want to see any of this.
The anxiety just goes up.
It does. And I get images in my head and I can't get them out, so I'll just lay there in bed like thinking of like the really scary thing and like not sleep. So
That's a good segue.
yeah, ready to go.
Hello, Kimmy and the Happy Jacks team. I've been playing and GMing RPGs since the early 1980s. I'm a relatively new listener to the podcast, and I've become fairly active in the Happy Jacks Discord. What a great community. A big thank you to Kimmy for inviting me over from the Magpie Games Discord. I hadn't encountered the show before. Here's a little RPG horror story I'd like to share from Piazza Game 2019, which
Also,
was
welcome.
the
We're happy
second
you're here.
to last in-person RPG convention I attended before the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
A little background. I used to be a huge Pathfinder fan and was once very active in the Pathfinder online community. I was Haladar at the Piazza message boards. Anyone? Okay. But starting in 2016 or so, I had started drifting more and more into the story-focused RPGs like Powered by the Apocalypse family of games. By the time of the convention, I wasn't really playing Pathfinder or any other D20 games. Still, I'd had a lot of fun in the previous Piazza games. Still had a lot of friends in the Piazza.
Paizo.
I've screwed it up enough times to realize that I said it wrong. Paizo community. And there have been a number of non-Paizo games in the convention schedule in the past, including a few that I ran. So I decided to fly to Seattle to attend. Overall, I had a very good time at the PaizoCon 2019, with one exception. Dun dun dun. I'm a big fan of horror RPGs like Trial of Cthulhu, Mothership, Trophy Dark, and Bluebeard's Bride. I love a good creepy story that builds dread and suspense, where the game builds to a glorious demise and the glorious demise of the player characters. That said, I'm not a big fan of splatterfest, gross-out horror. I get squeamish at excessive descriptions of gore, especially anything that has to do with eyes.
Ew.
I only do eyes from Blade Runner, remember that? 2, if only you could see what I've seen with your eyes.
Yeah. Kadave has a thing with eyes too. It's like always like, no thank you, no eyes stuff.
Despite having played Starfinder once or twice and having not bought my copy of the Starfinder core rulebook at the con, I signed up for a Starfinder horror game from a third-party publisher. The game was described as a creepy scenario set in an orbital food production facility after authorities lost contact, and that the touchstones for the adventure included the films Alien and Event Horizon. I like sci-fi horror, and I like those films, so I signed up. Additionally, the GM of the session, who was not the writer of the adventure, was a well-known and respected author of several horror-themed Pathfinder adventure modules, and I was really looking forward to seeing a GM style. Out of respect for his privacy, I'm not going to name him.
Good call.
At game time, I was one of 5 players. 2 of us had only played Starfinder once or twice and weren't all that familiar with the rules. 3 players had never played Starfinder before. The GM was a little late and apologized at the start, as he had never run Starfinder game before and was doing so as a favor to the scenario author. Red flag number 1!
Ooh, that's
Everyone introduced themselves, and the GM launched right into the adventure background and presented us with our choice of pre-generated characters. I asked him if we were going to have a safety discussion, and the GM gave me a blank look. What do you mean by a safety discussion? I replied, lines and veils, X card, script change, that stuff. He furrowed his brow and said, I have no idea what you mean by those terms. So let's just get started, okay? Red flag number 2. My instincts told me that I should bail then and there, and I decided to stick it out. This was a mistake. The GM handed out the pre-gens. They were all one-page character sheets of first-level Starfinder characters that seemed to have been printed off a Hero Lab. The sheets had names of the various abilities, spells, feats, etc. listed, but no descriptions of what those abilities did or how they worked. Red flag number 3! Apparently, the author of the scenario assumed that only players already familiar with Starfinder's rather complex rules would be attending this convention game, despite it only having been on the market for 2 years. None of the players at the table had this SF core rulebook with them, and the GM said that he needed his copy because he wasn't familiar with the game. We tried to access Starfinder SRD to view the rules on our phones and tablets, but the Wi-Fi in the room was only accessible to the people who were actually staying at the Convention Center Motel, which was only 2 of us, and the SRD page wasn't being responsive and was timing out. We ended up borrowing 2 Starfinder rulebooks from some of the other players at different games in the same room, and the 5 of us all spent the next 40 minutes or 4 of the 4-hour convention slot frantically copying over the rules for our characters' various abilities. While we were doing that, the GM was flipping between his copy of the module and the rulebook and taking notes to make sure he knew how to run the encounters. He even commented that he was glad we were taking so long because he hadn't come up with the rules before. He hadn't read some of the rules before. Red flag number 4! See, I would have left by now.
Yeah.
I'd be already, this is like, I don't care how, okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
By now, we're about 90 minutes into our 4-hour slot, and we're already started, and we're finally starting. We get the mission briefing. It's clear from our quest giver that he doesn't care whether or not we come back alive. Upon questioning, he tells us,
Cool.
in that case, we don't need to come back. He wouldn't guarantee that our next of kin would receive our pay. When I asked for our money or for some safety guarantees, the response is, well, that's the job offer. If you don't like it, there's the door. Red flag number 5. I really had to sit there for a long minute because I could not think of a single in-game reason that this character would actually take this job. Our quest giver basically told us it was a suicide mission. But I decided that rejecting the premise of the adventure wasn't really good sportsmanship as a player, so the character reluctantly agreed. I've done that. Once we
Yeah.
get to Silent Space Station, it was clear that this was a different sort of horror than was originally advertised in the convention blurb. The interior of the docking bay was splattered with blood and viscera, and someone had scrawled warnings on the walls in blood. In the second room, we encountered some really disgusting monsters that had an attack that would literally rip PC's arms out. And that happened to one of the other PCs. After the fight, we press on into the next room, and the GM says, and you see this? And he holds up an extremely disturbing illustration of mutilated corpses with dangling eyeballs. That's from the module. No warning, no asking permission. If we wanted to see it, he just sprung it on us. Red flag number 6, listeners. This
out.
was an illustration that I cannot unsee, and I decided I'd had enough of this. We hadn't established an open door policy, and I felt that just quitting the game and walking away would be taken as an insult. So I decided to fake my way out. I have a fake call app on my phone that I will pretend to call you after a set amount of time so that you can pretend to be called away for some reason. I told the table that I was my wife back home and there was an emergency I need to take care of, and gathered my stuff and left.
Okay. No, wait. I have to pause.
Yeah.
I had no idea this app existed.
Me either. I was like, oh my God, I want that.
I have to find this. I sat through so
Let us
many
know.
bad dates or like.
I was going to say
Yeah.
it's a dating app. It's for you set it ahead of time, and in case the date is going badly, it gives you an out, or you can just say, oh, I'll get it later if it's going well.
Yeah, like I've had so many times where I was like, especially when I was doing online dating, where I'd like set up with a friend to call, and then I'd just like do that exact thing. Oh, this is an emergency. I have to. oh, I'm so sorry, I have to go, but or just like silence it. Oh, my friend's calling. I'll talk to her later. Like,
I guess there's also like some safety tools in some bars in the bathrooms. So it's like if you have a date that's being creepy or weird, it's
Yeah.
like in the bathrooms they say, go to the bartender and order this, and they will escort you out or whatever, which is super cool because I think everybody has needed that at one point, whether there's some guy who's drunk at the bar and wants to pick a fight with you, or I mean, it's always nice to have an out.
yeah, absolutely.
I was kind of shaken from that experience, so I walked into the sales hall and ended up playing a game of Munchkin Pathfinder with Steve Jackson Games people to calm my nerves. They were very happy to let me vent about the experience, and we played that very silly game. Lesson learned. 1, just because you're a respected RPG author doesn't mean you're a good GM. 2, never play in an RPG that doesn't establish a set of safety practices at the start of the game.
True.
And 3, trust your instincts when you don't think you'll be a good fit for the game. Thanks for taking the time to consider this story. Sincerely, Mike F. Ithaca, New York, USA.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of red flags. But yeah, I think when they sat down and the GM's like, I don't really know this system while I'm running this as a friend. Like, even then, you're like, all the other red flags, like if you really wanted to play a system, I could see myself, I was like, I really want to see how this works. I'm going to kind of ignore these other things. But especially when they said that.
Or in this case, the Mike, did I misremember that? Mike was saying that he liked he liked that person as an author of other stories and wanted to see how they GM. Like,
Yeah.
I can totally see, especially that first one, kind of shelving your misgiving, because I know a lot of people who are great game masters who can run anything off the cuff, even if they haven't read the adventure, because they're really good at improvising. Maybe this guy was one of those people, but and you want to see. So I totally get sticking in there, but absolutely.
I have a really high tolerance for gore and whatever. I just, as a storyteller or whatever, I've explored all that, and it really doesn't bother me. But I would have checked out long before then. I would have checked out when he said he didn't ever run it before and wasn't prepared, and that's when I would have set my phone app up. I mean, kudos to you for sticking through it. The gore and viscera wouldn't have bothered me. It was up to that point. Everything else would have pissed me off. I would have left. I'm like, it's 40 minutes and we haven't played the game. I gotta go. There's beer at the bar, or something else I can be doing.
Right. I can get it.
There's 3 movies in my room. I can watch a whole movie and come back and play another game,
Right.
rather than sit through this crap.
Yeah, and I don't mind if at the beginning of a con game, if it's like creating a setting or like creating, stuff between the players, but literally almost an hour of us just looking up how to play the game. It's like, that's not why.
Over an hour, 90 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And
Like,
more than that, you're covering for this GM who's so inept that he didn't even supply the rules for the players. He just assumed, oh, you guys need the rules too. What do you need the rules for? Like, fuck you.
yeah, the GM showing up and expecting the players to know the system better than he did. It's like, that's shitty as fuck.
Or there's no Xeroxes of like the pertinent pages. There's nothing. They had to go and borrow books from strangers in the room.
Yeah, that's so embarrassing. Oh
The
my
GM
gosh.
should have been embarrassed. Instead, he just plowed along. Oh yeah, I'm so glad you guys are taking a long time, because I sure needed it, because I hadn't prepared. Like, I would have marched out right then and said, you know what, I'm gonna go get my book. Let me take my stuff with me while I'm at it, and never come back.
Yeah.
Screw
And
that.
Starfinder's crunchy as hell. Like, it's an older system. It's got a lot of stuff, and it's one of those things where if you don't do the rules correctly, it screws everything else up.
I don't care. Even if I know the system, I want my abilities on the page.
Yeah.
I don't want to just say you can do this thing and now I have to go search for it in a book. I need it there so that I can reference it quickly. Otherwise, hey, can I borrow the book back, even around a table? And because you always have to look for some nuance. Like, what is this? I think this ability can do. I better double check.
Yeah.
It's like, at the very least, if you're going to pre-gen the character, give them a stack of cards that has the abilities printed on them, so they at least know what they've got. That would have solved everything.
Right. Or take 2 seconds to type in a 1-word sentence that said, this does X.
Or
page number.
22.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Oh,
And
thank
that
God.
way they can just go, oh, cool. Because I do that on my character sheets all the time for like,
don't
oh,
have
I
the
don't know what
room
this
now.
does.
You don't have the room for all the abilities, yeah. And you
Right.
don't
What
want to pay for
really
players.
got me was, apparently this person's supposed to be a really good storyteller, or at least a good writer for horror adventures, and yet they had zero way to interact with to A, entice anyone to take this mission, or B, had no interest in making sure that the characters wanted to do it at all. It was. I grew up a long time ago playing first edition Dungeons and Dragons, and there was this whole thing about just reading the box text, and if it wasn't in the box text,
You didn't say it.
you didn't say
Yeah.
it. And so if someone said, "Oh, they're going to give you this quest," and then your other player goes, "Well, I don't want to take that quest," you'd be like, "Well,
what do you...
I guess we have to."
Yeah. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
You take wandering damage until you take the quest.
Yeah. I guess we'll go play Nintendo then, because
Yeah.
if you don't take this quest.
Yeah.
So this is 2019. The other thing that really bothers me is that this person's supposed to be a game designer, and the whole idea of safety tools and all that was foreign to them. Never heard of it. Looked at them blankly in the face, and this is 2019. So all of that stuff had been around. I would have given him a pass if it was like 2009 or something. It was still fairly new, but 2019, you should know better.
Now, there's a difference between an adventure writer and a game designer, though.
Still,
I mean, still, it's not an excuse. Everybody should use them. But I think people who write adventures sometimes, since they're accessing the mechanics of pre-existing games to write the adventure, they don't necessarily think of like the overall how to run a game mechanics that someone who's designing a game needs to think about always.
they didn't even know what they were.
Yeah, well, that's
That's my
that's
sticking
bullshit.
point.
And had no curiosity to be like, "Oh, what's that?"
Right.
Just like, I don't know what those mean, so let's play.
Right.
Yeah.
I was
Like,
I was
no,
gonna try to find the sentence
no.
here. It was like,
You don't know what those mean.
what do you mean
We're
by safety
not
discussion?
Yeah.
What do you mean by safety discussion? He furrowed his brow and said, "I have no idea what you mean by these terms."
Yeah. That's like 2019 to be so out of touch with the
Yeah.
overarching gaming
Yes.
community to not even have heard of them.
Yes. Whether you like the safety rules or not, this is something that is prevalent now throughout all of gaming, and the fact that they didn't even know it, I would have left. It's like saying, "Yeah, do you know who Gary Guy? I don't know who this Gygax person is, but we're going to be playing D&D." I'm like, "All right, I'm out of here. Bye-bye." It's like, it's one of the base tenets of the game. You ought to know these things.
And especially for a horror game, which is going to be
course.
like, you're absolutely dealing with things that are going to be horrific by the title of the
Right.
game, and you don't know where everyone's boundaries are.
Right.
Right. Yeah, there's
And he's running a horror game, and not only did not use safety tools, but didn't know what they were, they even existed. I'm shocked.
yeah, I've run into a lot of people who at this point hate them or are against them, and by run into people I mean on Twitter and TikTok who are like safety tools, and I hate them. But to not even but that's my asshole voice.
Yeah.
Safety tools, I hate them.
They're all 12-year-old boys, aren't
Yeah. Who knows? Actually, a huge portion of them are like much older
50-year-old
dudes.
grognards.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I get it.
grognards.
I'm not going to change the stuff and the fun we can all have so for one person who can't handle it.
Some snowflake.
Yeah. Oh, fucking A.
So as a small line on
Yeah.
that, the when they say, "I went through it and I turned out just fine," no,
No.
you did not.
Didn't.
Like, if that's your response when someone says they have a problem,
Yeah. But to not even have heard of them and have a bad opinion, it's just like,
I'm a gaming professional who's never heard of one of the base tenets of the rules these days. Yeah. That's how good I am.
I'm wondering almost like if he just doesn't like them, so it's easier than like engaging and explaining why he doesn't like them. He's like, "Oh, I don't know what those are."
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe
I would have bailed long before the horror
yeah,
pictures even showed up. I would
yeah,
have been
for
like,
sure. But
I don't know.
Mike, you were very brave, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you spent your time in a better way.
I actually, one of the conventions we went to, there was a guy who was also a game designer and worked for Steve Jackson Games and some other gaming companies and stuff. And he was a terrible GM, vindictive, like no leeway, no wiggle room. Like, it's like, nope. If you're gonna, all right. And he wouldn't warn you. He
Yeah.
killed people. And like, even Casey and Bruce, who have a pretty big wiggle room for bullshit, hated it.
Yeah.
So it happens. Just
Yeah.
because they are employed by a gaming company doesn't mean they're good GMs.
Yeah.
And I think that was like, what is it? Revelation number 2 that he came up with. Just because you worked as an RPG author doesn't mean you're a good GM. Revelation number 1.
Yeah. And since Steve Jackson was mentioned, we have an obligatory story to tell because it's happened so long ago. I think a lot of people don't remember or have never remembered that episode. So long time ago in the Happy Jacks
The Wayback
past.
Machine.
I need to preface this by saying that Steve Jackson is a famous curmudgeon.
Yes, he
right?
is.
I mean,
No, yeah.
it's no secret.
No, no.
He is a big curmudgeon.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, it was very funny. We died laughing. But we were doing an interview. Steve Jackson came on the show years ago.
I think it was still the podcast. There was no vidcast. And
Yeah,
were
there
all
was
just-
no, it was
they
way before.
They like AOL dialed in or something, and then we were like, yeah.
way back in the day. And so we're like, we hadn't really done interviews because we've never really been an interview show. We've always been based on emails and stuff. So Stu, with his journalism degree, was like, I know how to do an interview.
And he actually, Steve knew Stu because Stu would back in the day would write letters to
Yeah.
and so anyway they knew each other at least by name and such. Oh, hi Stu, how are you?
Yeah. So he came on the show and we were like trying to be cool and professional and ask him questions. And Dear Stork actually asked what at the time I thought was a really good question. Well, it was-
Softball question. It's any question you would ask somebody just to give them a chance to expand upon how great they are.
Yeah.
So I'm giving him this real softball question so that he could talk about how bitchin' he is.
Yeah.
So, I read once that Ursula Le Guin came up with her idea for Dispossessed by stepping out of the shower. I was like, where do you come up with all of these great gaming ideas? And
Steve Jackson was like, that's a stupid question. Like,
Yeah.
total dry. And like, it was just really funny. And we all just started laughing so hard that he must have thought we were even more ridiculous. Like, but it was, I thought it was hilarious because we were all like waiting for like the wisdom of where you get your ideas.
It's a total softball question. I mean, it
100%.
really wasn't even designed for a legitimate answer. Like, well, it turns out that I'm a savant and these ideas pop into my head. Like, I didn't even want that. What I wanted to do was expand upon the creativity of gaming. It's
Yeah.
like, it was an open-ended bullshit question, and he called bullshit on it.
It was very funny. I thought it was a really good question. I was like, oh,
I know.
maybe
right?
it's in the shower with your Head and Shoulders shampoo. Who knows?
Right. What's the secret?
Yeah.
Well, I go jogging or whatever it is that inspired me. I don't know, but it was his chance to tell us,
Yeah.
his creative process. And
It wasn't even a no, but it was
wa-
just a no.
He was having none of it. He called me an idiot.
It was a very, very funny moment. I don't even think that episode is up anymore.
It was really early on. It might have
Yeah.
been first season, maybe second season, but it was still the podcast.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that because I used to listen to the podcast all day long while I was working.
Yeah. Oh man. I'll see if I can dig up a link for it or something and post it somewhere. But good memories. Good memories. All right.
The last time I ever asked a softball question.
You learned.
I do remember
There you
asking.
go.
I did learn, and when we had who invented Savage Worlds? Sean.
Oh,
Yeah.
Shane.
Shane Hensley on. I asked him because your gaming book is so small, and it's so concise, and the price point is so low. Were you concerned that nobody would take your game seriously? And he goes, we were absolutely terrified. And he went on for a good 20 minutes
Yeah.
about marketing, which is what I probably should have asked Steve Jackson. Something more intelligent than, hey, Shane, where do you get your ideas from?
To be fair, it really was one of the first times we had like a real like known person on the show, and
And Shane's not a curmudgeon, and Steve is. So.
Steve
Right.
is. Yeah, it's part of his brand.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Next
Um,
email.
Do you want me to hit this last one or do you want to?
Did you both read one, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But mine was short. I don't mind reading this one.
I can read it. I read things. All right.
We
I
got
can
us a
trade off
reader.
if you want to. Greetings, Grand General of the Golden Lasso and her great gaming guard. I like that one. Okay. It's Shane from just
That's
outside
acceptable.
Washington, D.C., perhaps better known as RU Jedi on the Discord. Back with my second of two emails. Okay, I actually put this email in first. Sorry. Asking about the behind-the-scenes wizardry that is game design, development, and deployment. Today's question is about having that nose for marketing, for making good games, business decisions. Oh my gosh. Okay. And the deployment that doesn't involve choosing your strategy with a roll of the die. Sure, most of us are here to play or run games, but when I hear so much about people in Happy Jack's community making or selling their own games, I thought it would be helpful to ask about the business side too. Of course, I'll ask on Discord too, but you all are fun and live. So to start, let's talk about the case of D&D Spelljammer. For listeners not familiar with Spelljammer, it was a campaign setting for advanced D&D or a D&D 2nd edition era that was essentially D&D in space and offered a way to connect other campaign settings together. It was discontinued by third edition, although fan mods continue to exist for new versions. This past April, Wizards of the Coast announced they were bringing back Spelljammer. This is all fine and good. Not much new about reviving old game lines, especially when it's done by the gaming behemoth's Wizard of the Coast, which was also a super great announcement. This is not an email. I'm like, okay, I've been spending 2 years designing a space game, and D&D's releasing a space game. Crap. Oh well. What I found interesting was that shortly before the announcement, Wizards of the second edition Spelljammer product. Wizards puts the second edition Spelljammer products on sale. So I had to rewrite that sentence a little bit for you. I don't think they are on sale anymore. I'm guessing this is a marketing tactic. Releasing new digital copies of older products does not cost much or anything at all if it was already prepared for digital publication. It's not like they are making new hard copy box sets. It could also be a low cost way for them to drum up hype for a new edition. On the other hand, I remain skeptical that newer D&D gamers would be interested in buying something that old, unless they're intentionally rocking an AD&D campaign or making an OSR hack. Plus, I'm sure we've all lamented about how much we spend on game products, so is there a cost benefit associated? Buy old Spelljammer now or wait a few months and buy new Spelljammer, or maybe buy something else shiny right now? So my question, or really a conversation for the crew tonight, does it seem odd to you to release an older edition of a product when you are on the precipice of releasing a new edition of that product? If you're not printing hard copies of old products, does it make sense to push or offer the digital sales for those older products? Perhaps making money on those sales now and hedge your bets to get them coming back for the updated version coming soon? May your dice roll stork it, if only because critical fumbles are much more memorable and fun than critical successes. All the best, Sean from just outside Washington, D.C., and Are You Jedi on the Discord. P.S. Drink a toast to the person to your right. Yay! P.P.S. What is one game now out of print that if it was re-released digitally only that you would go to shut up and take my money mode instantly? Let's answer the first part first.
I think it's perfectly, in the music industry, there's people that sit on catalogs of old music, and let's use Frank Sinatra as an example, right? So there's lots and lots and lots of old Frank Sinatra songs, and every now and again they digitally remaster them and dust them off and put them in together in collected sets because they already own that music. They might as well be making money off of it. It's not doing them any good just sitting in their vaults, and they re-release it to much new hype. I've discovered with gamers, people find an edition and they kind of stick with it. They're like, I'm tired of buying new Splat books. I'm tired of buying books. This game works. I know the rules backwards and forwards. I'm not moving. So there's a lot of people stuck in second edition or third edition or fourth edition, and that's their game of choice. And that's totally cool. So if you release something that can add on to those games that doesn't cost you anything, that's been out of print, you're going to make money by selling it again. So they've already made money the first time when they sold it, and maybe the second time when they re-released it and such and dusted it off. And now they're making money a third time. So basically, it's free money for them. It does generate hype, and it does please the people who are like, oh, yeah, I lost all my Spelljammer books in the fire, and now it's so cool that there's a digital, oh, yay. Because these guys have been playing second edition since the 80s, and they don't care. That's their game. That's what they want. And now that Spelljammer's available to them again, they're pleased. So I think it's a multi-pronged attack, and I think it's really smart. And again, using the music industry, they're sitting on a catalog of all of this cool stuff. You might as well try to make money off of it again. Although it doesn't do any good just sitting there in their vaults.
So to dovetail on that, that's like what the Disney Vault does, where they sit on their movies and then announce that they're releasing this old movie that all the parents remember really fondly and for their kids, but only for a limited time so that they can keep the hype and the marketing and all that.
Well, they also have to do it to keep the copyrights.
Of course, but I mean,
really, that's why
sure.
they do that.
But it works for the other way too, because it was just about the copyrights. They could keep them out in perpetuity. But if I knew that I can always go find a copy of the Jungle Book, I'm less inclined to buy it when I can only buy the Jungle Book.
now there's a
during this
live
time
action
period.
version.
Well, why would I want that?
Yeah.
I have the edition that I know. Yeah,
Nobody
Exactly.
wanted that ever. Actually, it was
wasn't
pretty
bad.
pretty. It wasn't
it was actually really good.
bad. Of the live action, it was one of the better ones. I really liked it, actually.
I did too.
You know, I got burned out on The Lion King and the Little Mermaid with my little sister, and I have rarely gone back to see a Disney movie after that.
I think I saw either of those. Live action, yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen the live action.
Oh.
It's because I've cut that out. But there was a time when I could actually recite the entire Little Mermaid from memory with no other cues because I saw it so many times with my little sister. Anyway, back
Look at this stuff.
back to the story.
Isn't it
Yeah.
neat?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think my collection's complete?
Well, now that they've released it on PDF, yes. Which is the other point I actually wanted to make is that maybe there are people who got really into that and had it, but never picked up that Splat book or whatever. And now, if you can pick up 10 of them for a nominal price because they're PDF, why wouldn't you want to expand what you had in that collection, what you were playing? Suddenly you have new material.
Exactly. I want to be where the PDFs are. I want to see a tablet. Sorry, I'll stop.
No, it's perfect. What I want to say is actually, they're not aiming, I don't think they're aiming for new gamers because I think you're right. I think that people who are on 3rd, 4th, 5th edition, they don't care about 2nd edition for Spelljammer. Who they are trying to target is people like me. And I will say Spelljammer holds a place in my heart. I will fully admit it is an ugly baby, but it's my ugly baby. And it was the first box set that I ever bought on my own. So and I had it for years and years and years. And stupidly, at some point, I did well, I'm an adult now, and I'm going to put away my childish things. And it was one of the things that finally made the cut. That was like, I never play this. I think it's really cool, but but no one else is interested in it, so I'm going to get rid of it. So for me, hearing that Spelljammer is coming back in 5th edition, I'm super excited about. And if I'd known they were doing the PDFs, I might have gone and bought all the PDFs just because there are things in there I really like. Give me a Dragonfly ship. I'm so happy.
Nothing else. You could just go through the PDFs and look at the art and tear up.
Oh yeah.
Because oftentimes you go, oh yeah, that picture.
Right.
Yeah, Mordecai running through the streets, and oh yeah. So yeah, it's funny how you get nostalgic for just even the look of the pages.
Right. Yeah. The look and the feel and the stuff like that. So I don't think it's I think it's let's see if we can go back to the well for the people who know what this is and who want to get excited about it. And also, some of those are also going to be those curmudgeonly people who are like, well, I don't want to get in 5e because I don't play 5e, blah, 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 blah. But you're still giving them part of the excitement of getting to play in Spelljammer, which they might not have picked up. It wasn't terribly, it wasn't very well known and loved at the time that it came out. And I think a lot of people view it through rose-colored glasses later. Because I'll be honest, it was really a mess. It was a mess.
TSR put out
of a
some
system.
terrible games. Like,
Yeah.
Was it the spy game they put out that Dave and, I don't know, Spycraft or something? It was horrible. It was full of charts.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
So it's such an awful game. They put out a lot of bad games, which I get. If you put out a really terrible game, you wouldn't want to re-release it now. I mean, maybe you want to completely rewrite it, but you want to re-release it. But it's something like this, which is just sort of like an amendment to the game that already existed. It's easier than like,
Oh yeah, it's like 3 different subsets of rules that they just kind of mashed together and
Right.
said, you'll make it work. You guys are clever.
That'll be fine.
it's all optional anyway. They don't even
Right.
have guidelines.
Right. You have a good GM.
Yeah. Part of me wonders if it's their way of kind of like staving off complaints about people saying this isn't available anymore, because people are wondering that about like everyone now that they've acquired D&D Beyond, like what happens to all my 5e stuff if Wizards of the Coast releases a new edition of D&D? Like, are they going
You
to
mean
keep...
like they're going to be doing?
Exactly. Like, what happens to all my 5e stuff in D&D Beyond? Like, does it get deleted? Blah, blah, blah. I feel like releasing all the old Spelljammer stuff was their way of saying, okay, this is your chance. Like, get it now or don't complain later.
It's puzzling to me
Yeah.
that they don't support any of their old games. It's like that could be a cash cow. Even if you just put out one module a year for any one of the older systems, that would just be something that they could sell. Because there's, like I said, there's people that have stuck with an edition and they don't move anymore. They have all the games, the rules memorized. They have all the books. They don't need anything more. But if you were to throw out a new adventure or a new splat book for not 3.5, that's Pathfinder, but 4E or something, people would be like, oh, that's my game. Oh, cool.
Right.
And it doesn't cost them anything. They have people on staff that are sitting around doing nothing anyway.
Yeah, but all those people are making new content for their new game. So when you really look at the cost of paying people to develop high enough quality product that it could actually be sold by Wizards of the Coast currently, even paying one person for their salary for 1 year probably would be much more than they'd make off the release.
I get it.
Of one
It's
of
like
those
it's like
things.
Windows still making programs for XP. It's like, why would they do that? Because they're
Right.
trying to make the latest product work.
Well, and
We got rid of the one that was fine that worked. We gave you another one that's a lemon, and we're gonna get that working, and then once it's fixed and working fine,
sunset that.
we'll put out another one.
and with is it DM's Guild? Like people are making tons of third-party content for their games they're actually getting a piece
They're
of.
already siphoning off anyway.
Yeah, so they get like a little fraction of your money for all the work that you do.
It's not that little from what I understand.
No, it's
but-
a pretty big chunk of what it is for each sale. But so they're already getting money off that. They, in the long run, will make more money by not supporting those old things and forcing people to buy all the new books
Just
in
like
the long
Windows.
run. Yeah, exactly.
or to buy stuff on DM's Guild, because that is all the great part of hiring someone to do it, except they don't have to hire them.
Yeah.
They don't have to onboard them. They don't have to provide any things. They just need to coast off the people who are so excited about that they want to put out new content.
The learning curve of learning all these D&D games it was so exhausting that I've stopped. They basically, what do they call it? They've demand destruction for me, which is like, you've asked so much of me to keep up with you. I've gone through 3 editions now and I'm done with you. Screw it. It's you treat me with such disdain that now everything's working fine. I got it figured it all out, and things have got, and now you drop another edition that is clunky and doesn't work, and I got to start all over again. Oh, and you're not supporting the old edition.
I
It's
guess
really
I'm the
infuriating.
picked puppy because every time they do it, I'm like, all right,
I
I'm
gotta get a
gonna
new
read
one.
the new set of rules.
Well, it's
I'm
again.
really excited about this edition.
I mean, using the Windows analogy, it's after a while, 4E won't work, but it does work.
Right.
It just doesn't.
Well, I've been doing it as long as you have. I mean, I
Yeah.
remember I had Redbox, I had first
Yeah.
edition, I had second edition, third. I didn't go into 3.5 because that was just a goddamn cash grab. But I went fully into fourth. I'm heavy into fifth. All that stuff. When 6 comes out, I'll be all over that. But I have a friend who still runs
2E, second edition. Yeah.
No, he still runs first edition.
Oh, really?
He got that burnout real quick where he did not want to learn second edition rules. And so he still runs first edition.
I keep saying second edition, but it really it's AD&D. Like the player's handbook. That's really what I. Oops, sorry. Whoa, hey, big noise. Anyway, because I have a friend the same way. That's the game he knows. He has all the books, and he runs them, and they're fun. And I actually, when I played a game with him once, it was Tim Graffam. I was at his house for a weekend, and I was like, "This is great. I still know all these rules. It's like wearing that comfortable pair of shoes you've had for a long time, or your favorite pair of shorts or something. You're like, this is just great."
Revisit THACO. Revisit
nice.
page
I
88 with the
know.
chart that had
Yes.
all of your spell
tearing up, it's so
resistances.
familiar.
All of your saves.
Yep.
I think also, I mean, it is just great marketing, like getting that momentum built up for your release of a big game. A lot of times, like movies will do this if they're a remake of an old TV show or something. Like suddenly, everyone who has the rights to that TV show will start streaming or replaying that TV show. And people who want to play the new edition, especially I think nowadays, where so many people who are doing streaming and stuff like that want to be like, we're going to be the first people to run this game. Might actually buy those old editions to just start to be familiar with the world. Because if they can read the splat books for it and stuff like that, that can give them a lot of
Get
very
the lore or get other things going
all
on.
that stuff. So all they have to really do when is they can probably start already in their heads if they're familiar with 5e, like skinning how it will work, and all they really need is like the actual monster builds and stuff like that when the new edition comes out.
Right.
So
There's a lot of business models that you could use.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a pay-for-play model, which is you could basically release the core game for free, and then you charge for all of the splat books and character generators and all that stuff. Or, you could you could do what Apocalypse World does, which is sort of the same thing, right? You kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're able to just use the engine that they have, right, and then create your game around it. Do you license it from them?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Now some companies want you to, but you can't actually trademark like dice mechanics. So you'd have to take like very specific terms and stuff like that for there really to be. But the people who made Apocalypse World very specifically were like, use this, like it's free, go, Creative Commons, have fun. So a lot of people just I think they ask that you mark it as Apocalypse World. There's like a little logo. I think it's like a request, but they don't get mad if you don't use it. But a lot of people do just, to honor them and things like that. Yeah, it's polite. It's nice. Like, credit them. But I don't know. It's interesting.
And they use the rising tide raises all boats theory, which is like if the more Apocalypse World games that are out there, the more we have a chance of world domination, the more it just comes back to us tenfold because it's still based on our product.
Which 100% has been the case for them. Absolutely.
Yep.
That also reminds me that, like, from a Wizard standpoint, from a Hasbro standpoint, there's no such thing as bad press. And even if all you're doing is generating people going, well, it was so much better back in second edition, and reading those PDFs and
Funny
doing all
because
that
Hasbro's
stuff.
really good at generating bad press. That's pretty much all the way through. I mean, they're great at that.
Yeah, well, it's working for them, right?
Whether it's the
not
edge
going
lords
away.
that they hire, or whether it's their draconian hiring and firing policies, they're great at that.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
They might actually want to try having good press for a change.
It's not broken. Why fix it?
Everything's broken. The whole place is on fire. I guess that's the idea. It's like, look, our place is on fire, so you stop and look.
Yeah, but they can just keep throwing money into the fire to keep people looking, and they're
Right.
good with it.
That still works.
You're right.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what their theory is.
But in any case, I mean, even if all they do is spark arguments about which edition's better, or I wonder if this thing will show up, or I'm not going to buy it because they released all the second edition stuff anyway, and if I want to, I'll just reskin it. All of that talk, all that discourse just makes it more and more in your mind, and you're thinking about Spelljammer, and you'll be aware of it. Even if you don't buy it, someone else will talk about it, and maybe you'll become interested in it. Who knows?
So true.
I like Mongoose a lot, especially with their whole Traveler thing. And what they did is they took Traveler and dusted it off and stuff, but it's still you can still go buy the old Traveler books, and it's all still relevant. And I think it helped everybody. So
Right.
Yeah.
there's a lot of business models out there. There is no one way to sell and market a game, even depending on what system you decide to build it in, whether it's an original system or if you're using Apocalypse or if you're doing a hybrid of something. It all dictates how you're going to market it. So if you want advice on how to do that, go to a business class.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
teach it at the local community college because that's what you're talking about. It's not about games and it's not about people. It's about selling and demographics and marketing tools and all of that boring stuff that you didn't like in college, but now think you should have taken it when you 40 years ago when you were in school.
Yeah. There's also a bunch of really great podcasts out there about marketing and YouTube tutorials and stuff like that. So you can do it on your commute.
So Kimmy, being someone here who has produced games and put them out in the world, maybe you could give us things that you know now that you didn't know then that would have been useful to know.
Oh my God.
Since that's part of the question as well.
Part of the
Like
questions.
for those of us who have made games, what are the business decisions
Get the
you
bulk
can make?
mail rate. Pay that ahead of time, right?
Yeah, right?
Get
Oh my
that
gosh.
stamp.
Wait to charge shipping until you're ready to ship. Don't do it pre-pandemic and then actually ship things 2 years into a pandemic.
Have all your artwork and everything ready before you start the game.
Or at least
Start
some of
advertising.
it, yeah.
Most
But there's a whole bunch of like crowdfunding stuff. But specifically for this, I do think you were right on the money with the kind of creating buzz on social media. It is the hardest thing to do, but it is legit like one of the most effective things you can do as an indie game designer.
You got to be an influencer. You got to be your own influencer.
Right,
You
but
got to create it.
the thing that's even harder than that is because if you are pushing your own games, people on social media hate it and they don't want anything to do with you talking about your own games. But if somebody else talks about your games and it like gets a lot of things, you could sell a bunch. Like
That's why there's influencers buying like homes in Malibu right now because people pay them to talk about their game, and then they go and buy, a $32 million mansion with money.
100%.
Fuckers.
Like getting your game in front of those people. Decima like I guess like a month and a half ago now, went semi-viral on TikTok by someone like using it in this little video of theirs. And they weren't even an influencer. It just happened to be one of those things that people started liking. And they've done a whole series of the exact same thing. And then just their last one that they did just happened to go viral. It got like 30,000 views or
Cool.
something, which is great. And then like immediately like Decima sales went through the roof. I now have a bunch of people like through the roof, like for me, like on like
You went from tens a month to like dozens a month.
well, I went through like not really even selling it. Like I had some left over from the Kickstarter, and I was selling some, and people were interested, but most of the people who had wanted it got it through the Kickstarter. And then suddenly it was like literally within a couple days, I was completely sold out. Which was a couple hundred decks. It wasn't like a huge amount. I didn't have stock to sell. It was like the leftover ones. So it did wonders. And now I have a whole wait list for
Oh, neat.
whatever's going to happen next. But yeah, that creating conversation, however you do that, like what Nick was saying, is it's something so hard to generate, but it is so valuable to you as an indie game designer, because like
I think that's.
yeah.
I don't even think it's about indie game designer. It's about selling something at
Anything,
all. Whether it's
yeah.
advertising, whether you want news articles, you want to get on the news programs, you want a magazine ads, you are old school magazine ads. Even now, you want somebody to click on the bar. You just need eyeballs on your product, and you need to get it out there. And really, all of that is just a form of advertising.
Yeah.
It's getting people to notice.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing about anything. You could have the greatest product in the world. You could have something like that could solve world hunger tomorrow. But if you can't get people to look at it, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there.
Yeah. And it's so hard to cut through the noise.
Always
now
has
on
been.
social media. It's so hard. What about their PPS? What is one game now out of print that if it was re-released as digital only, that you would go to shut up and take my money mode immediately?
Well, I already said it is Spelljammer, and now that I know that they released them, when I get home,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go looking for those PDFs. Because also, if I could have all those books in a tablet or floating in the cloud somewhere, and I didn't have to take them with me every time I moved, much more likely to read through them and use them again.
I'm pretty sure that all the games that I liked are available. I think there's people that are out there crazy enough that have made old scans of them, and you can get PDFs of them. But one of the games I played way early on was called Chivalry and Sorcery. And Chivalry and Sorcery was about knights, and it was sort of a D&D-esque game, but they had a really interesting magic system based on sort of elements. And you could create your own spells. If you wanted to make like a fireball spell, you would create wind, create fire, and move, and that would be your fireball spell. But you had to combine the three elements and then create your own spell and craft your own. And it's really kind of neat. As far as I remember, it was a kind of an incomplete game, and in fact, the type font was literally like somebody typed it. You know, it's one of those old books.
I have that for Champions. I have first, second
Yeah,
edition Champions,
yeah.
where it's like, oh,
And it's really
someone
small.
did this on a Smith Corona.
Yeah. And I'd love to go back and revisit that and just check it out and see if it still holds water. Does the defendants still hold water? Yeah. I probably is awful now. And it might even still be in print, but I think you can get it. I'm pretty sure I can find a PDF of it if somebody took their old book and scanned it. But that's something I'd like to check out. There was also a game, and I think I bought a reprint of it years ago, called Metamorphosis Alpha. Metamorphosis Alpha was a science fiction game. It's kind of a gamma world thing where you're playing along. You're sort of this tribal person there's all these creatures that are attacking you, and you're doing things. You're trying to survive stuff, and it's spoilers because it's on the cover. It takes place in a giant colony ship, and you are basically, everything's devolved into barbarism. The ship is still maintaining life forms and such, but creatures have bred and such, and everything's evolved back down into a tribal state, and you're just trying to get around. So at some point you break out of the biome and into the ship.
So sort of like Ringworld, but it's all contained in a colony ship.
And and it's a whole contained game. I mean, it was like D&D was like, it wasn't just a module, it wasn't just a one-off. That was the game. So you could keep playing that game. Go back, and at some point you end up taking over the ship and running around the air ducts. I mean, it was a whole neat thing that you could run it. So it's called Metamorphosis Alpha.
in that thought, like I would seriously consider getting all the paranoia stuff on in PDF. I consider getting all of the champion stuff on PDF.
Oh, yeah.
Again, there's a ton of source books for all those things, and not having to lug them around and not having to do it. So
Foxbat. Pictures of Foxbat
yep,
from the
yep,
champions.
the old Foxbat and his velocipede.
Yep.
Yeah. I love the original Marvel superhero TTRPG.
Oh yeah,
They've had they're like Stork was saying, kind of like the bootleg scans of it, but they're not searchable. They're just pictures of the page.
Yeah.
And if there was like a true searchable PDF of that, I'd 100% love to have that. I've never played it, but it's one of those games that everyone talks highly of it, and I just speaks highly of it. Sorry. And I just would love to play it and also have a good PDF. So I would be maybe incentivized to actually play it, because I don't want to play a PDF that I have to flip through like a book. It's a nightmare. All right.
I found an old copy of Arrowfall years and years and years ago, and I printed it all up and bound it in a Kinko, so I still have the book, but it's an interesting game system as well. So there are ways to make it work. So because nothing's really ever gone now.
Yeah.
Now, it's just
The internet is forever.
it is.
All
And
right.
for porn.
it's somebody's passion, and somebody has an archive out there
Yep.
somewhere.
Somewhere. All right. Thank you for joining us for season 30, episode 13 of Happy Jack's RPG podcast. Thank you to our chat mod, James B, and our amazing Patreons who keep us ad-free and independent. My name's Kimmy.
I'm Nick.
I'm still Stork.
Yep. And don't forget, Jackercon is coming up. Visit happyjacks.org/JC. That's going to be July 22nd through the 24th. Go sign up for games. There's 16 whole games. Tonight we're going to end with a little bit of a different song. So this is a metal version of the Decisive Battle, which is a Final Fantasy VI song. Usually we play more folk type, more acoustic sounding music. This is by a band called Super Madness. NES is capitalized, Mad NES,
Nintendo
Entertainment System.
Got
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And our good friend Ryan Iyengar is helping me learn how to play guitar. So he's in this, and he's partnered with Abria, who's a super good friend. And you can find this band on supermadnes.com. And all right, we'll see you next week. Get ready for a little bit loud music. Loud. It's gonna be loud. Okay.